Tansin itute magtiar Wheatley nisigasun o Pasquayakuche. To Wow, welcome to APTN National News. The dispute continues regarding a recent audit involving FSIN, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. Indigenous Services Canada and the KPMG accounting firm released their forensic audit of FSIN almost 2 weeks ago. It found $34.3 million in ineligible, questionable, or unsupported funding. The FSIN says they provided over 51,000 documents in response to 717 questions and have now released 11 facts addressing the findings. Last week, ISC first said the FSIN never requested a full copy of the audit, then later clarified that they had. However, ISC says its policy is not to share full audits with funding recipients to protect sensitive information, adding the FSIN will receive a line-by-line summary of the findings. FSIN has since posted 11 numbered facts about the audit to their social media. They defend everything from high vehicle mileage to COVID-19 expenses being fully accounted for, and allege opposition forces tried to sway the 2024 FSIN election in favor of Ottawa-aligned candidates. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe was asked about the audit recently and praised 4th Vice Chief Craig McCullum's letter on accountability to Saskatchewan First Nations chiefs.
I did appreciate Chief McCallum's comments to ensure everyone is moving forward in an honest and humble way, and I think that is in there are some words for all of us.
Megan Gallagher went missing in September 2020. Her remains were found 2 years later near St. Louis, Saskatchewan. Now the last of 9 people charged in connection to her death is standing trial. Roderick William Sutherland is facing charges of manslaughter and indignity to human remains before a judge and jury. Sutherland is the first to face a judge and jury. The other 8 either pleaded guilty to lesser charges or had them stayed. A publication ban has been put in place. It prevents details of Sutherland's case being shared with the public until it concludes. The trial is expected to last 3 weeks at Saskatchewan's Court of King's Bench. Nearly 750,000 students throughout Alberta stayed home today after the Alberta Teachers Association went on strike. Rallies were held Sunday in Calgary and Edmonton in support of the teachers. An estimated 18,000 teachers, parents, and supporters were at the Alberta legislature. The 51,000 teachers from the public, Catholic, and Francophone schools are asking for pay increases, hiring of 5,000 new teachers, and the reduction of class sizes. They have been working without a contract since August of 2024. A new addictions treatment clinic is opening up in Winnipeg with a focus on helping First Nations in Manitoba's Island Lake region. 2 organizations, Anisinunu Ogamawin and 4 Arrows Regional Health Authority, developed the service with healthcare providers and peers who have lived experiences with addiction. The Manitoba Anisinunu Mobile Action Network, MAMIN for short, will provide addictions and mental health services to urban and remote communities. Along with its hub facility near the Winnipeg Airport, MAMIN will travel to the Island Lake region, providing residents up there access to addiction treatment. Anisinunu nations like St. Teresa Point, Wasagamak, Red Sucker Lake, and Garden Hill will benefit. The organization says that just last year, Rapid Access to Addictions Medicine, or RAM clinics in Winnipeg, treated 144 individuals from Garden Hill alone. 60 Garden Hill residents are already on MAMIN's waitlist for treatment and support.
This is why this clinic matters so deeply. Here, peers with lived experiences work alongside nurses and physicians. Here, care is brought closer to our nations through a hub and spoke network that reaches even the most remote places. And here, we begin to close the gap between the care people need and the care they can access.
Saugeen First Nation's fight to be recognized as the rightful owner of a popular beach in Ontario ended over a month ago. That's when the Supreme Court of Canada refused to hear the town of South Bruce Peninsula's appeal. Over the weekend, the community joined together for some sun and sand to celebrate getting the beach back. Here's APTN's Annette Francis with more.
Buddies Gage, Paul, and Reese Ritchie challenge each other's aim. They're celebrating on Saugeen Beach with other members of the Saugeen community.
It just feels nice to know that we finally got our land back after so many years of fighting for it.
Saugeen Beach has been a popular destination since the early 1900s, when it was known as Sauble Beach. The property runs on the northern edge of the First Nation. It's just over 2 kilometers of prime beachfront that was not included as part of the reserve due to a surveying error in 1854. Councillor Sonia Root says it's been a fight for generations.
When I was a kid, I remember my dad was on band council at that time, and he showed me where the boundary was, and he told me one day we're going to get that back. That's our beach. And he told me that, and he's been gone for a while, but today his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are here for the victory, so it feels amazing.
Councillor Randall Coggy says today's private victory celebration is huge for the community. It's a validation of their history.
This victory is in honor of our ancestors. This wasn't just a one-generation fight. We've been fighting this since before the ink dried on the treaty, right? So it's been a 170-year fight to get to this point, and I think this victory is something that belongs to all our people, especially our ancestors. But more importantly, I am encouraged when I see our children here today.
According to Coggy, relations with the town of South Bruce Peninsula will take some time to repair, but with a willingness to work together, it can happen. Right now, the community needs to work on the second phase of the case, how to get compensation for being dispossessed of the land for all those years.
My hope is that we don't have to litigate that, but in fact we can resolve that through negotiations. The one thing that I think was very interesting about this case, that I think stands apart from a lot of cases, that our treaty partner actually stood with us. Canada was actually an ally and acknowledged that these lands should have been and always should have been part of Saugeen. So that you don't see that very often. I think that was a very unique example, but my hope is that we work to resolve those issues through negotiations. We don't have to litigate that portion of it.
For Paul and others celebrating today, the memories of a victory will last for generations to come.
I'm pretty sure that my kids and my kids' kids will be pretty excited to know that their dad and grandpa, grandma and mom helped change the sign.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Saugeen First Nation.
And we introduce you to a musician who's sharing her 60 Scoop story when we come back. Cheskwa. Pitigwe. It's official. Yukon's Premier Mike Pemberton announced on Thursday that the territory is headed into a general election on November 3rd. Our Yukon reporter Sarah Connors tells you what voters there could expect. She joined our Krisa Najikode earlier.
Thanks for joining us, Sarah. First off, what can you tell us about this upcoming election so far?
Yeah, so what I can tell you so far is that we've had the Liberals in power since 2016. But something interesting there is that none of the outgoing sitting ministers are going to be seeking re-election, which is a little unusual. You don't usually see all sitting ministers not seeking re-election. So that might be something that I think might be of interest to people going forward with this election. And also our current party leader for the Liberals, Mike Pemberton, he also doesn't actually hold a seat right now, but he will be running in this election because with the Liberal Party, we've had a bit of turnover there. We've had 3 premiers in 3 years. So that's, I think, something that's going to be on people's minds. And another thing that's happening with this election is that there's going to be a plebiscite vote. So a plebiscite is when basically it's just a vote on a public issue. So for this election, voters are going to be asked if they want to change the Yukon's voting system, which is first past the post, which is, the person with the most vote wins, or if they want to change that to the ranked system, which is if a candidate is unable to reach 50% of the vote plus one, the candidate with the least amount of votes is dropped, and then the process continues until a candidate gets 50% of the vote plus one. And what's kind of interesting there is that we haven't had a plebiscite vote in nearly a century, so that might also be something that's kind of new happening with this election.
And Sarah, what Indigenous issues do you think will be at the forefront of this election?
So it's still pretty early to speculate because the election was really just officially called today. But something we might be hearing about is the draft framework agreement for new minerals legislation in the territory. It's not a law, but it's kind of a blueprint for what new minerals legislation could look like in the territory going forward. It's been in the works for about 4 years. So it suggests, possibly doing away with the free entry system in the Yukon, which is where anyone can stake a claim basically anywhere on public lands without consulting with First Nations first. But there's been some pushback to that. Some First Nations say it doesn't go far enough. Some First Nations say it kind of like leaves non-self-governing First Nations out. So that will probably maybe be something we're hearing about because it will be up to the next government whether they want to continue with that draft framework. Maybe they want to make amendments based on feedback. Maybe they want to scrap it altogether. Something else that might come up possibly is the First Nation of Natchez call for a public inquiry into the Eagle gold mine disaster. That was a mining disaster happened last year, which saw a lot of cyanide being released into the environment. And the First Nation impacted by this, Natchez, they've really been pushing for a public inquiry into the circumstances that led to that disaster. And the outgoing government never committed to that. So that might be also something we're hearing about.
And Sarah, have there been any campaign promises made at this point by Premier Pemberton or other people who are planning to run?
Yes, there has been. So yesterday I was again at the Liberal campaign kickoff, and I know the Liberals touched on building more houses, affordability, healthcare, growing the economy, and also reconciliation with First Nations. I know for the NDP, they're really gunning for healthcare. They said if they are able to form government, that they are going to be hiring a lot more healthcare workers, which is needed in the territory. Healthcare seems to be a really big one for them and for the territory's Conservative Party, which is called the Yukon Party. I know they're also focused on building more houses, growing the economy, supporting small businesses, and cutting power rate increases. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about these campaign promises as the election unfolds.
That's APTN Sarah Connors reporting from our Whitehorse Bureau in Yukon. Hi, Kinanasko Mitten. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
The 60s scoop took over 11,000 Indigenous children from their homes to live with non-Indigenous families between 1960 and 1990. In that time frame, Saskatchewan piloted a unique program called AIM, the Adopt an Indian and Métis Project. Video journalist Rachel May sat down with a musician who was taken by the AIM program.
I just want the world to love more. I want us to realize that we're all human beings and that we're all here for the same purpose, which is to live and thrive and instead of just surviving.
Raven Reed is a folk musician. She was born in Yellowknife but raised in Saskatchewan. She was just 4 years old when she was taken from her family and placed in a children's group home in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, as part of the Adopt an Indian and Métis program known as AIM, which would later be linked to the 60s scoop. She was adopted later by a family in Prince Albert in the early 80s. According to a study done by postdoctoral fellow Alison Stevenson at the University of Saskatchewan, the AIM program was piloted in Saskatchewan in 1967, with the policies continuing into the 1980s. She says the stated goal was to increase adoptions of Indigenous children. The study goes on to say children were advertised for adoption on television, radio, and in newspapers to promote transracial adoption. Reed says being tied to that program comes with mixed emotions.
So knowing that I was part of this program angered me, made me sad, but it also empowered me to speak up and tell the truth, because you can't have reconciliation, truth and reconciliation without the truth first.
She says she turned to poetry, painting, reading, writing, and eventually music as a way to heal from the trauma she experienced growing up. In her early 20s, while visiting her adoptive parents, she answered the phone and discovered her birth family had never stopped searching for her.
I finally picked up because I happened to be over at my adoptive parents' house at that time, and she told me who she was. I didn't even know I was Cree my entire life. I thought I was Dene. That's what my parents told me.
But the reunion wasn't without pain. Reed says the impacts of being taken were felt by everyone.
It's been difficult to reconnect, but it's also almost impossible to build a relationship, because when we were taken, my mother and her siblings turned to alcohol, and so addictions played a huge part in that.
In recent years, Reed lost her adoptive father, her biological mother, and her adoptive sister, all within months of each other. She says her story is filled with hardships, but also with strength and resilience.
There's so many things that we still face today here in Canada on treaty lands that we need to stand up and say something and point it out and be brave enough to come together as a community, as a country, to face those truths, to listen to them, and to stand up and do something about. There's 94 calls.
Reed wants all survivors of the 60s scoop residential schools and those living with the intergenerational impacts of these systems to know they are heard.
I want you to know that you're not alone, that we're all out here feeling what we feel and trying to make a difference. I think that if we try to get onto the same page, which is love each other, you know, how you love yourself, we can make a difference. We can change the future for our children and our grandchildren.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
And we tell you about a pair of friends hoping to win this year's Pow Wow Pitch. That story when we come back. Cheskwa. To Wow, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Jason Corshane launched a boat from the shoreline of St. George Lake, Manitoba. Thanks, Jason. That looks like a nice way to enjoy the last of the warm, sunny days we have left this summer. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send your pictures to share at aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, St. John's 19, Charlottetown 17. Kuujjuaq 6, Nain also 6. Chibougamau 9, Quebec City 26. North Bay 16, Sault Ste. Marie also 16. Big Trout Lake 3 degrees, Sioux Lookout 7. Churchill 5, Thompson 6. Barons River 5, Gimli 10. North Battleford 20, Yorkton 9 degrees. Uranium City 4, La Ronge 7. Moving west, high level 11, Peace River 13. Edmonton 19, Calgary 22. Bella Coola 6, Campbell River 14. Dease Lake 4, Smithers 7. Up north, Old Crow 3, Mayo 4. Norman Wells 3, Fort Simpson 6. Tuktoyaktuk 1, Colville Lake also 1. Cambridge Bay -1, Baker Lake 0. Resolute -8, Iqaluit 2 degrees. Pow Wow Pitch is a competition for Indigenous entrepreneurs to pitch their business ideas for a chance to win part of $100,000 in cash. Kiwetinook Consulting was founded by Victoria Perry and Sunday Quescacapo. They are in the running under the Professional Services and Trades category. Julia Ross spoke with Sunday about their pitch.
It's hard to feel any anxiety or nervousness in regards to outcomes because you're like, well, you know, this other Indigenous entrepreneur is going to be helping our communities too in another way. So we're all winning in the end, really.
Sunday Quaiskikapo is co-founder of Kiwetinook Consulting. They are from Opaskwayak Cree Nation and a member of Kinnisau Sipi, Norway House Cree Nation. Quaiskikapo's company is a finalist in the Professional Services and Trades category in Pow Wow Pitch. Quaiskikapo and their business partner Victoria Perry have an idea to speed up the process of Gladue reports.
So we're currently working with a tech company to make our software a bit faster and to be able to make Gladue reports less expensive and speed up the timelines as well. And we're also coming from lived experiences, we're coming from a community perspectives, and so we're really hoping that this prize money will lead us to bringing more of our community members home.
Gladue reports are used in the court to help judges understand an Indigenous person's life before sentencing. Gladue reports are considered integral to the restorative justice process.
We connect with community members and their family and friends, and we help tell their story towards the court and be able to give them a voice in a very difficult, sometimes system.
Gladue reports have a wait list up to 6 months and cost up to $6,000. The backlog is not helping anyone. Kiwetinook Consulting will try to change that.
Kiwetinook actually means north wind in the Swampy Cree language. And so we really want to honor our name and continue working with often underserved communities, including the North and the Arctic.
Writing Gladue reports is a lot of work. The accused person's family, friends, former school teachers, elders all have to be interviewed. Kiwetinook will create a software program to transcribe these interviews and cut through the red tape.
And so being able to have a private transcription software where their information is going to be protected, but also helps us organize who's saying what and what's happening. It speeds up a lot of the process. It cuts a lot of hours into the transcription process and makes our work less expensive and more accessible for not only ourselves, but for our community as well.
Quaiskikapo says the pitching experience so far has been empowering.
Yeah, to be able to represent not only being an Indigenous business, but also as a 2S LGBTQ+ business as well, it's very empowering to be showcased among fellow Indigenous entrepreneurs in such a great framework. It has been very impactful, not only for ourselves, but for community. It's very obvious that our type of work and diversity is very much needed in our communities to make it more safer, diverse, and inclusive.
Final pitches happened October 2nd. Winner of the $25,000 prize will be announced during the Pow Wow Pitch Grand Finale on October 22nd. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your APTN National News for this Monday, October 6th. Quick shout out to a couple of colleagues, both Creason Adjacote, our host with the most, and our editing wizard Thomas Sellers are celebrating their birthday today. And Sandra Seidel, our stellar lineup producer, tomorrow. Mino Tipiska Netute Mak, happy birthday. I'm TR Wheatley. It's been a pleasure to be here from all of us at APTN to all of you. Egase, Kitam, Kikawapa Mitinano.